Let's talk about that. What does it mean to be compatible, Kim? Is compatible mean, hey, we like the same things, we like the same foods, we like the same activities? Is compatibility really about likes and dislikes, or would you say that there's something deeper underneath all that?
Welcome to the Kickass Couples Podcast. This is the place where we help committed couples who want to level up their marriage experience newfound clarity, hope, and confidence. We're Matthew and Kim, co-hosts and husband and wife.
In 26 years together, we've seen a lot and never thought it could be as good as it is right now. We're here to help you successfully navigate the messy, dirty, and wonderful world of marriage.
We believe all couples deserve and are capable of experiencing an extraordinary and fulfilling marriage. And each week, we're bringing you life lessons from real-life successful couples to help you grow and strengthen your relationship.
We'll get started right after this message.
If you want to learn how to experience the best, most fulfilling year of your marriage, we invite you to order Matthew's new book, Kickass Husband, Winning at Life, Marriage, and Sex. You can get it at Amazon.com or visit Matthew's website, www.matthewphoffman.com. Again, that's Amazon.com or www.matthewphoffman.com. And now, back to the show.
In 2018, certified relationship coaches Seth and Crystal Karnes founded the Marriage on the Rocks podcast. After coming to the realization that maintaining good relationships does not demand hard work, the duo aimed to spread their message and assist others in their pursuit of a happy, prosperous, and effortless relationship. Through their podcast, they have established a platform for the discussion of the contemporary challenges and issues impacting relationships. To help create additional fun and enjoyment, they have integrated distinctive cocktails into the name of their podcast. Since 2010, this couple began working together and soon developed an unbreakable bond that transformed them not only into best friends, but life partners. Despite the challenges in each of their previous marriages, they've been able to develop a fresh understanding and deep admiration for one another. Seth and Crystal are now devoted to helping other couples to successfully maneuver their own relationships. Welcome back to the Kickass Couples Podcast. I am here with my favorite woman in the world. Love having her by my side. Love doing this with her because I get to be with her and learn. We had a great time in our interview with Seth and Crystal Karnes. They are both married for the second time, and really, Kim, they talked a lot about lessons learned and the importance of compatibility. And, we're going to kind of jump into that because that's they said their superpower is they spent the time to make sure that they were highly compatible, same values, same principles. And that was a common thread, I think, through the entire interview.
Yeah, I think that what makes them kick ass is that they learned a lot the first time around. And they took what they learned and applied it to their next relationship. But I think they also felt like they were just naturally and organically very compatible people. But I would think when you've been in a relationship where you maybe were not compatible or you had made a lot of mistakes, that you would really sort of naturally seek that next person out who is maybe a little bit more like you, a little bit more what you need out of a person.
Let's talk about that. What does it mean to be compatible, Kim? Is compatible mean, hey, we like the same things, we like the same foods, we like the same activities? Is compatibility really about likes and dislikes, or would you say that there's something deeper underneath all that?
Definitely something deeper. I think that compatibility, we can be compatible and, have like the same things or not like the same things, right? But I think when we're talking about a relationship, it needs to be deeper than that we need to have the same core values, and we need to really, really understand each other, where we came from, where do we want to go, do we have personal growth mindsets as well? And so many things come into play when you talk about compatibility.
No doubt. And I think, a good relationship, to find out if you're compatible, is not just about time together. that helps, and it gives you the opportunity to have shared experiences, to see how somebody reacts, how they handle things, and do you handle them the same. But when you have that time together, I think it's having the discussion and going back and talk about history. What was it like for them growing up? What did they see modeled as their parents or grandparents, or whoever their caregiver were people that raised them, and how did they feel about it? Was that a good example, a poor example?
Sure.
You know, we always ask the question in our interviews, what did love look like to you growing up? And I think that's really important to know.
Yeah. What are some kind of questions that we can ask our partner when we are, kind of learning and seeking out information from each other and really getting to know each other? What are some things we should ask? What are some things conversations we should have to talk about?
One of the things that comes to mind is often listed as one of the top 3 reasons people get divorced or separated is finances. Are you a spender or a saver? What does managing your finances look like? What's an excessive purchase? One of the things I talk about all the time when people talk about finances is anytime Kim or I have a certain expenditure that's over $500, some people might set that limit at $100, some at $250, some might say $1,000 or $5,000. The level's immaterial. It's what are the two of you comfortable with that you can say, you know what, I'm not going to spend X until I've talked to my partner about it, because I want to make sure that they agree and they're on the same page. And
Right.
While we're on the subject of finances, Kim, budgets, right? How much are we going to spend on a vacation? What are we going to spend on groceries or clothes for ourselves or on our kids? And working within parameters that we feel happy, healthy, and confident with. I think all those questions around finances, if you don't know them, if you're together with your partner and you don't know those answers, I'd encourage you to have that conversation now. Yeah. Well, what else, Kim? What are some of the other things?
Talking about growing your family. Do we want to have kids? Do we, or, maybe someone just really comes to a relationship saying, I'm not having kids. I don't want to have kids. I think those are really important discussions to have before you get really serious with one another.
And you can't make assumptions like, I want kids, so they must too. And that can change over time. But if you're getting together and committing to your partner, they don't want kids and you do, and you think, they'll get there eventually. I'll soften them. I'll break them down. I'll get them to change. That's some dangerous territory. I've seen that blown up in people's faces where the husband and wife have had different ideas about what that looks like. And having I've seen men that want kids and women that don't, and kids come into the picture and it makes the relationship a mess. And I've seen women wear the guy down where finally they just give in, but it's not what they want. And it always has an entanglement and some difficult stuff in the relationship.
Give me another example.
Intimacy. What does intimacy look like for you? Or Kim, here's one of my favorite questions is, what do you need to feel the most intimate with me? Right?
Right. And there's so many different kinds of intimacies, right?
Yeah, we talk about that all the time.
Absolutely.
There's intellectual, there's emotional, there's
spiritual.
Sexual, spiritual, and there's physical. What I love, Kim, I didn't know this before we got married or before we started I wrote my book and we did this podcast, is you can have physical intimacy without sex.
Are you tired of feeling like you're living with a roommate instead of a lover? Do you miss the days when you were completely into each other, intellectually, emotionally, and physically? The truth is, many couples are struggling behind closed doors. Putting on a brave face for the rest of the world is exhausting. If you want to get back your joy, return to thriving, and take pleasure in your marriage, then Kickass Couples Coaching and Matthew P. Hoffman are here to help. Join us alone or with your partner and start taking steps towards overcoming the pain-filled obstacles and improving your relationship right now. For a limited time, we're offering a free relationship assessment call. Go to MatthewPHoffman.com/coaching to book your free call now, so you can start making real changes in your most important relationship today.
Of course.
Yeah, there's hand holding and
women love it.
Touches and hugs and arm around you or arm on your leg or just a gentle squeeze. And not that couldn't lead to something, but if it always does, you're going to frustrate the heck out of your woman, because women want the reassurance, but not always the second shoe doesn't always have to drop there.
What about their history? I feel like, Seth really came to the relationship saying, my parents were not the best examples. Love was not modeled very well for me and my family. And I think that you can see a bad example and you can choose to emulate it in your relationship, or you can see a bad example and say, I'm not going to do that. I want my relationship to be different.
Right.
And I feel like Seth really said, I'm not going to bring, the behavior that was emulated to me. My dad was very controlling. My mom was miserable. I'm not going to bring that to my relationship.
And that's, I think we all have those experiences where we say, I'm going to do this because it was important to me and I really liked it. And these are things, a lot of couples we talk to, no way in heck am I going to do that in my relationship. I want better, or I want different, or it was so dysfunctional. So it's kind of normal, I think, to have both of those elements in any relationship. And we all have junk in the trunk and the skeletons in the closet, right? Things that maybe we're not so proud about, or that might sound weird, or if you're sitting there and you're afraid of being judged by your partner because of your history, you got to move through that. You got to bust through that wall and be willing to share warts and all, because we all have those warts.
And believe it or not, it's going to bring you, it might be difficult, and you may be a little concerned about having that conversation, but if it's done in the right way and in the right context, it can actually make you closer.
No doubt.
It is another part of gaining more intimacy in your relationship.
No doubt. And, not everybody, Seth and Crystal went through bad relationships. I think Crystal said she made the decision to eject because she just was miserable, not getting what she needed. And in Seth's situation, his first wife said, I'm out of here, and it's not what she wanted. So they both had that experience and came together. But you don't have to, get your lump, so to speak, in a relationship, get married and hit eject. And the key is really, Kim, is to having those conversations, right? We talked about it's the conversations that don't happen, that need to, that end up damaging and having the relationship. So what do you think, like, we talk about this a lot, but what should people think of as the solid foundation to have in order to bulletproof that relationship?
Well, I always go back, Matthew, to the 3 C's, because I really believe that those 3 things, commitment, communication, and being able to resolve conflict, are key to a successful relationship.
Yeah,
if we can work on, making sure that we are committed to our spouse, that we are communicating properly. And I'm not talking about talking to you. I'm talking about real, true, honest, open communication with each other, vulnerable communication. And then learning how, when we have conflict with one another, when we are in disagreement, how do we approach each other with conflict?
Yeah, you got to have a game plan.
You got to be able to work through it.
You got to have a game plan. And if you don't have a game plan, it's going to hit your partner like out of left field. They're going to think, why are they coming at me like this? Or why are they insisting on that? So I think this may sound rudimental and fundamental, or maybe that you don't need to have it, but ask your partner, how are we going to handle conflict or disagreements? Because it's going to come up. And if you have a game plan and you agree, this is how, hey, Kim, when we conflict or have a disagreement, I don't need you to be critical and say, I told you so, and get on me for having ended up somewhere, but let's agree how we're going to confront each other and talk lovingly and out of understanding, so that it's not a surprise and we don't feel attacked or scrutinized. Sure.
And that leads right into the commitment portion of their interview. And, they talked about or at least Seth said, that really it's just their commitment is part of the makeup. I love this. He said it's part of the DNA of our relationship. Yeah. It's not forced. It's not, we don't make it happen. It's easy and it's natural. So yeah. I love that. And I know it's not that way for everyone. But I think that one of the things that they were able to put into place in their relationship is, talking about things, communicating what are our boundaries, what did we learn from our past mistakes, how can we, take and implement a lot of those things that we learned into this new relationship. They set boundaries. For example,
No doubt.
he had an ex-wife who really liked to go out and be with the girls and go to Vegas and party, and and that was really difficult for him. And so really setting up those boundaries, having those conversations with his new wife, it made all the difference.
That's huge. And, boundaries are a necessary element, Kim, of every relationship. And if you haven't communicated to your partner, like what they can and can't do, or what will fly and won't fly with you, then you're setting them up for failure, because they're going to do things that you don't want. But if they don't know, if they're ignorant, right? Ignorance is not a bad thing. It means you just don't know. So I think you have to have those conversations around boundaries about what is acceptable and what isn't. And I think that one of the things Crystal kind of talked about as well, relative to their commitment, she said, you know what? I learned I've got to be a lot more patient. Yeah. She goes, I was not super patient in my first relationship, and I saw the damage that it did. And I had to be willing to be more patient and not let things push my buttons and get to a boiling point, but be calm and listen and take some of those things in and not be so mean. She said, I was nasty because I was impatient, because I jumped to conclusions, I made judgments. And she said, I had to learn how to be more patient. And she really did do that and show up that way for Seth. And that was another part of it, I think, the success of their relationship.
Yeah. What about communication for them?
Yeah, one thing more, Kim, I wanted to talk about is, the idea of commitment before we jump to communication is, we think that commitment is the cornerstone. We have the 3 C's, and commitment's the first one. If you have the commitment, you're then free to work on everything else, because you're not worried if I make a mistake or I screw up, it's not going to have relationship ending power. So I can try and fail and know that I'm not going to be crucified for falling short or not making it. So people go, oh my gosh, commitment. I don't want to feel tied down. I don't want to feel conscripted. I don't want to feel restricted. And I'm going to tell you, it's the exact opposite. Yeah, when you're committed, security. You have security, you have freedom, and the options become much greater when you have first demonstrated commitment. Because
it's like the net under the
it's the
trampoline or the high wire. It is the safety net of the relationship.
She's saying it now too. I say that all the time, and so we're starting to talk and sound a lot like each other. I think that's good. We have that freedom, and that that leads into communication. And I think one of the things that Seth talked about in communication is, he said, there's communicating and there's talking. And just because you're talking, it doesn't mean that communication is happening, right? And so, just because we're saying words, right? And why is that?
Real communication is intentional.
Yeah.
And, we are open, we are vulnerable, we are intentional about really spending time communicating about the important things, about our life's dreams, about our vision for the relationship. That's real communicating.
It is. Yeah. It's got to have substance. It's not fluff. It's not, what do you want for dinner? What time are we going here?
Yeah.
When are we doing that? Those things have to happen, but that's got to be more of the minority of your communication.
And I love Seth's take on it too, because it was complete opposite. It was, communication just means sometimes shutting your mouth and listening and really processing what the other person is saying to you. So that's the active listening piece that we talk about. Yeah. And that is when you just, really are quiet and you're shaking your head and you're acknowledging, and you really are taking in and processing what your spouse is saying.
Are you struggling to maintain the emotional and physical intimacy you once shared? Do you feel like you're spending more energy finding fault and tearing your partner down instead of magnifying their good and building them up? Don't worry, you're not alone. Many couples are struggling behind a forced smile and an inauthentic happiness. You feel drained, unheard, and more often than not, unappreciated. The good news is it's not too late to rekindle the flame and strengthen your bond. I'm offering a free relationship assessment call to help you take the first step towards revitalizing your relationship and reaching your own relationship nirvana. Whether you come alone or with your partner, I'm here to help you create the space for a more fulfilling and satisfying relationship. Don't wait any longer. Make the changes you need to thrive. Book your free call today at matthewphoffman.com/coaching. And let's get started on your journey to a kick-ass relationship.
Yeah, I love the idea of when your partner is talking and you're listening and they're finished sharing. So a great way is to come back and say, so what I hear you saying is, or so when you say this, you mean that. And if you don't get a full body nod, exactly, that's it. If they go, well, no, not really.
Tell me more.
Exactly right. Tell me more.
Tell me more. Yeah.
And having that.
Or explain it to me a little different because, sometimes we understand things incorrectly, right? And we make the mistake of thinking we know, but we don't. So keep asking questions. And that's another thing that I love about, really good relationships. Stay continuously curious about one another. Keep asking questions.
Yes.
Keep digging.
Stay curious.
Absolutely.
Because wouldn't you say in our relationship, sometimes on the surface and the face of things, that's not what's really happening. When you ask somebody, how you doing today? Oh, I'm okay.
I'm fine.
I'm fine. Right. I think we heard another couple say to us, one of the responses they are not allowed to say. This was another couple.
Well, I think that episode hasn't aired yet. So
hasn't aired yet. Okay.
Away.
But I'm going to say it anyways, because
yes,
I think that
so true.
Not allowing your partner not to answer a question.
Yeah. He's not allowed to say, I'm fine.
Not allowed to say I'm fine, because that's like one of my least favorite words. Fine is a 4-letter word. Another one of those 4-letter words I absolutely can't stand is busy. When you ask how somebody is doing, they go, I'm so busy. Well, what does that mean? What does that mean? That you're running around like a chicken with your head cut off? But what does that tell me about how you feel, or what you're doing, or what's your mental state?
Yeah,
or I can be busy, but I can be engaged in great activities.
Well, you want to go deeper than that. You want to go deeper than just the response of busy or fine.
Or fine.
Or
right.
I'm okay.
Yeah.
You really want to know and understand how that person's feeling.
And I think that's what Crystal and Seth were alluding to,
yes.
is we have real conversations. We share what we're thinking and what we're feeling. And I think they said, too, no conversation is off the table. There's not anything in the relation. We can't talk
Nothing
about
is taboo.
That. Yeah.
Everything can be put out there, and the other person is totally okay with it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, kind of one of the last nuggets, Kim, that I loved about the two of them is anticipation. And when you get to know somebody and you spend a lot of time around them, it's not anticipating by finishing their sentences, but it's understanding and knowing them well enough to anticipate their needs before they communicate them, before they verbalize them or express them. And that's intimacy, because if I look at my wife and I'm like, golly, she's so tired and she's stressed right now, what can I do to meet her needs without her having to ask, and just give it to her? It is so nice to be the recipient of love from your partner when they're working to meet your needs before you have to ask.
Yeah, and love them and meet their needs the way they need to be met, because we all have a different way that we like to have those needs met.
Yeah, and you should know that.
Understanding those and implementing it is huge.
At any point in time, you've got to know what your partner's number one needs are. And if you don't, you have to ask, because we aren't mind readers. And I think that, Seth talked about a little bit of that proactivity. He said, we are proactive and we work to anticipate if we can figure out what our partner's needs are. And if they can't, you ask. And then deliver. And there's nothing wrong if you don't know, but I love the idea of anticipating and being able to bring it home for your partner.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And I think the last thing I wanted to touch on that I appreciate about them is their spontaneity. I think that they incorporate that into their relationship, and it keeps things alive and moving forward and fun. And, again, the anticipation of what's coming next, the spontaneity part. I know they do little gifts for each other, and things will just arrive with, out expectation, and that's fun. And I think that those things are important in a relationship.
Yeah, I think you talked about Seth talked about getting Crystal a Dolly Parton t-shirt because he knew she'd love it.
Yeah.
And so he just got it for her, and he
Just
said,
shows up.
And it shows up, and she's grateful for it. And he goes, and I wasn't even thinking about, well, it's my turn next, or reciprocity,
Right.
or quid pro quo. He goes, I do the little things for her because I think she'll like them, and I think they're important to her. And he says, I know it's going to be reciprocated back to me in some way, in some time. And I get excited about
He finds
anticipating
joy
that.
in it. Yes.
Yeah, and that was a sweet thing about their relationship.
Exactly. Well, this was a great interview. I hope that you will take the time to go on and listen to it in its entirety. Lots of good information in our interview with Seth and Crystal.
Yeah, thanks for joining us on the recap. Go back and listen. If you liked this or any other episode, give us a review so we know what you like. If there is something you would like us to talk about on the Kickass Couples podcast, a topic that you think needs some airtime, we have incredible connections with fantastic team of elite KCN therapists. We've got special episodes coming up. Look for those. We're going to talk about how to have red hot intimacy with your partner with two great panelists. So if you want to hear something, let us know. Send us an email at info@kickasscouplesnation.com, and we will be responsive and give you more great content that you love to hear.
Thanks for listening to us. And remember that happily ever after does not just happen. It's on purpose.
We'll see you out there. Thanks, guys.
That's all we've got for this episode of the Kickass Couples Podcast. If you like the content of this show, you'll love Matthew's newly released book, Kickass Husband, Winning at Life, Marriage, and Sex. To receive a digital mini book of quotes and images from the book, all you have to do is rate this show and leave a review in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you tune in to listen. Then email us a screenshot of your review at podcast@kickasscouplespodcast.com, and we'll get it over to you right away. Until next time, remember, happily ever after doesn't just happen, it's on purpose.